Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's Shiur, a slightly different background. Very interesting halachic topic to discuss tonight, and that is, what do you do if a car is parked across your driveway? Are you allowed to go out knowing that you might actually knock it, you might scratch the car? And if you do scratch it, do you have to pay? This came up a few months ago. One of my kids drives, and we've got a driveway, and there was a car parked fairly on where the pavement was up, and there was another car parked sort of half over the drive and half on the pavement, and she couldn't quite get out. There was probably just about enough room, but she was in the drive on an angle, and it was very hard for her to maneuver out, and sure enough, she scratched the other guy's car. So she's a good girl. She dealt with it, hard-earned savings that was spent, many hundreds of pounds, and she used it for that. But in the summer, I came across a tshuva of Dayan Shmal. That's Rabbi Shmal's son, who's a Rav in Dayan in Antwerp, which addresses this question, which has a surprising conclusion. So for the Halacha Shiur tonight, we'll discuss this. What to do when a car is parked across your driveway? What is the Halacha? Now, we try and always connect it to the parsha, so I'll be honest and I'll hold my hands up. The connection to the parsha is very tenuous. The Kodesh Baruch Hu says, "Avram lech lecha mi'aretzecha mi'lantecha mi'savicha," go. But what happens if you can't go because there's a parked across your drive? That is the tenuous connection. Okay, so the starting point is the Gemara in Baba Kama. The Gemara in Baba Kama, Daf Kaf Ches Amud Aleph, says the following: "Hamamali chotze chaver kadiyan v'kadesh shemen." Someone fills your chotzer, your courtyard, with jugs of wine or of oil. The owner of the courtyard has the right of exit, the right of entry, so he's able to be meshaber, to break his way out. If the barrels are blocking his exit route, he's allowed to break the barrels in order to get out, and meshaber v'nichnas, he can break them in order to get into his home. That's what the Gemara in Baba Kama says. Now, the Rambam, when he codifies this Gemara, he adds some very interesting points. He says the following. This is the Rambam in Hilchos Chovel Amazik, Perek Vov, Halacha Hey. If you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. Hari, Shemile chotze chaveroi, kadayayin v'shemen. Your friend fills your courtyard with barrels of wine and of oil. Afilu ichnisam b'shus, even if he brings them in with permission. In other words, he asked you, and you said, yeah, with pleasure. You need to store your kadim somewhere. Come and store them in my chotzer. You gave him permission to keep them there, but you didn't undertake to be a shomer, to be a guardian, to watch over them. Therefore, I am entitled to come in and out of my own chotzer normally. And anything which I happen to break on my entry or my exit, I am exempt. If, however, I take a hammer, a sledgehammer or something, and I purposefully break them, even if he brings them in without asking permission, so the Rambam makes three very important points. Number one, even if the barrels are left in your reshus with permission, I have the right to go in and out. That is the first point the Rambam makes. Why? So long as I don't undertake any responsibility, I'm not a shomer, I am therefore exempt if I happen to cause damage to your barrels which you stored in my courtyard. However, if I cause damage unnecessarily, I just sort of gratuitously just break your barrels, then I'm going to be liable for that damage. Now, the Ravad argues on one point. The Ravad says, just the next line is on this Rambam, whenever he breaks anything on entry or exit, that's what the Rambam says. This is only true when is the homeowner exempt for causing damage when he was trying to get in and out of his home, only if he took these barrels and he gave and he didn't give permission for it. But if he gave this fellow permission to put his jugs there, then and I break them, then I'm going to be chayav. So says the Ravid, I'm only exempt if the barrels were left there without permission. If I gave permission, then I'm actually going to be chayav for any damage caused. Now, the big question therefore is, who do we paskin like? The Tur, interestingly, paskins like the Ravid, and so do other Rishonim as well. But the Shulchan Aruch, in two places, paskins like the Rambam. In other words, he just brings this Rambam la Halacha, and he makes and the Ramah makes no Haggah. So it seems both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah paskin like the Rambam. If you take a look in paragraph 6, this is in Chesh Mishpat in Siman Shin Ayin Tes Sif Dalet, Harishim Milechot Sechaver Kadiyah Meshemen, a guy fills his courtyard with barrels of wine or oil, even if I gave you permission to keep your barrels in my courtyard, since I didn't undertake to be a shomer for them, I'm allowed to come in and out, and if I break them, I'm potter. Okay? And then he does say, he adds, of course, if I break them bekavona, then I will be liable, but if I just break them trying to get in and out of my own home, then I am potter. So the Shulchan Aruch paskas like the Rambam. So, just applying that to our situation, if someone blocks access to your house, according to the Gemara in Baba Kama, you have a right of entry and of exit. And therefore, you are entitled to go in and out of your home. And therefore, if you cause damage on the way in or the way out, you scratch the guy's car, you are actually exempt. If you were to forcibly smash the car, then that could be different. But if you tried to get out in the normal way, then you would be exempt. Now, there are two important caveats. The Sma, in the second place where the Shulchan Aruch brings this, which is also in Chesh Mishpat and Siman Tov Yud Beis Sif Beis, the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'im milei kol haderech kadim," if he fills the whole way full of kadim, she'ef shelavar, that you can't access your house, afilu shavrei biyodayim palta. Then, even if I break them actively, then I am exempt. Miu b'shasha shibrim huzik b'charseho. If I am damaged, whilst I'm breaking them, then part of the guy he doesn't have to pay me because I smash his barrels bekavona, and then let's say all the oil or the wine goes all over my new suit, or some shards from the barrels tears my clothes, then he doesn't have to pay. He is potter. If I chose to break them and I cause myself damage, then I can't send him the invoice. Now the Sma, however, says a very interesting point. This is his lashon. Even though he says that he's filled up the whole entranceway with jugs, we're talking about a situation where I could have gone round the side, I could have crept around the side, I could have climbed over the barrels. That's when I'm potter. If I cause some damage, I try to go around them, but if he fills it up to such an extent, that it's just impossible to access my house, that's when the Mechaber says you're potter. So in other words, the Sma has one caveat to this. The first caveat is that you're only exempt if there was no other way out. If I could have gone a different way out of my driveway and I chose to go past this block, the car which is blocking it, then I'm exempt. But if I chose to sort of go out and just to knock his car, and I could have gone a different way, then that's not an excuse. So that's number one. The second caveat, an important caveat, is what Dayan Shmuel brings in his Sefer Kisoyos LeDavid, that there is a Tosfos there in Baba Kama, and let's read it. This is the Kisoyos LeBeis David, this is paragraph 7. He brings the Gemara Baba Kama, the Rambam, the Tur, the Shulchan Aruch, etc. And then he says, what emerges from all the above, the ein derech acheres lefonav lotzeis mechatzer lahamshich b'rishus rabim, muta afilu lishba b'yadayim b'derech yitzyoso. What comes out is that if I've got no other way to get out, I'm allowed to knock his car on exit. Ulam. Yesh letzayin ledivrei Tosfos. You've got to take note of a Tosfos there in Baba Kama. Shekosvu. When do we say that I can break my way out or break my way in? When there's a big tircha, it's a big effort for me to sort of push all the kadim to the side. It's not such a big deal. Then I've got to try and do whatever I can to prevent damage to this other person. V'hadivrei meshpa meviim la'halacha, and this is brought la'halacha by that posek. V'cheinu b'nidin dinon heichel delekatirchen mechuyev likra l'ruven bal ha'otay sheyav lekachto kedei l'mno hezek. I've got to use reasonable effort to try and find who is the car that is blocking my drive. If I sort of put on my street WhatsApp group, or in this situation, he called the police, and the police said, well, we don't know whose car it is. Then I've done my reasonable efforts to try and find the owner of the car, and therefore I'm not going to be chayiv. So what emerges is this. The strict application of the Gemara in Baba Kama, certainly by the Rambam, is even if this guy covers my drive with permission, if the guy brings the barrels in, then I have got a right to get in and out of my home. And so long as I didn't take responsibility, saying yes, you can park here and don't worry, I'll look after your car, which is not normally the case, then I've got the right to go in and out, and therefore I will be exempt if I cause damage on the way out. Two caveats. One is, I'm only exempt if there was no other way out. If I could have gone a different way, but I chose to go past his car and knock it, then I'm going to be chayiv. Or I've got to make reasonable endeavors, which means I've got to try and find out whose car it is. If I know it's a certain neighbor, I've got to knock on his door. If he turns around and says, well, he's gone away for a few days, or even perhaps he's not back for an hour or two, then I'm not sure. These are grey areas. But generally speaking, if I make reasonable endeavors, then I'm allowed to try and sort of creep past, and if I scratch the car, then so be it. And I'm exempt from damages. Okay, so it's an interesting and perhaps a little bit unexpected psak, but there you go. If someone is parked across your driveway, you have got a right of access and an exit. And if you're going to cause some damage and you've made reasonable efforts to try and there is no other way to go out, then in fact you will be exempt. Okay.